concerns the Manchester United forward Rasmus Højlund. Remember, we were telling you that AC Milan wanted to do a loan with an option. Rasmus Højlund and Manchester United's preference is a permanent deal, or at least have a permanent element attached to that deal. So that one looks like it was cooling off. But Napoli, we understand, were trying to do a similar deal. But Sky in Italy are now reporting that they are open, on Napoli, to including an obligation to buy in any kind of loan deal for Rasmus Højlund. That's after AC Milan failed to convince Højlund to join them. Now, Napoli had been proposing a similar deal to Milan's one. Now they've opened up the possibility to including a mandatory buy option. Sky in Italy are reporting that Højlund is now head coach Antonio Conte's top priority after that injury to Romelu Lukaku, and Napoli are now ready to make a significant investment in the striker. This one is definitely one to watch in the last 10 days of this transfer window, because we do know Manchester United would be open to a sale. Let's move on now, Mark, to...
Did Manchester United not want to do a loan here?
Well, because they spent £72 million on him 2 years ago. And on paper, it makes sense to send a player out on loan, because the thinking is you get him off your wage bill, he goes out on loan, he does well. If he does well, that puts him in the shop window, that increases his value, and then next summer you can sell him. But it doesn't always turn out like that, because the flip side of that is these players on big wages, I'm not saying that he necessarily is on big wages, but we've seen other players who just get on the sort of loan merry-go-round, where every transfer window they're going out on loan somewhere, and the club who's taking them is paying a proportion of their wages, but in actual fact the club who own them can't actually sell them. For instance, the situation with Antony, he played really well at Real Betis, but he's still a Manchester United player. Jadon Sancho did pretty well at Chelsea. No one's really come in for him on a massive permanent deal. It's just more loans the whole time. So I can see from United's perspective why in an ideal world they would want a permanent deal, but some of these clubs, especially like Italian clubs, are much more interested in trying to do a good deal and get a loan plus an option and, you know, try their luck in the transfer market.
Yeah, Jeff, surely like Manchester United don't want to be in a position where you've got, especially those three players, Højlund, Sancho and Antony, that aren't going to be playing football. They're just going to be left there on huge wages. So surely they've got to make a decision sooner rather than later. And if they may have to just compromise and send them out on loan if clubs are offering that. Yeah,
if it's not the right time to sell, I think loan is definitely the right option, and it gets the players out maybe for a year. Like you said, having them coming into the training ground or coming in at different times, maybe to when the squad is there, it's just messy. And for me, I think just let them go out and play football. They might have a good year, and it might be a better option to sell them next year.
Jadon Sancho's played his best football abroad, there's no doubt about that, and it feels like that's the most likely place for him to go, but feels like he's just holding out for a club that's going to pay his really high wages.
I think, you know, the move has to be right for Jadon Sancho. A couple of clubs have come in for him. He hasn't felt like it's the right move at this stage of his career. There's talk that he may want to go back to Borussia Dortmund and they might try and make a move for him. Fenerbahce were interested in him. The one that's really intriguing for me is Roma. I mean, Roma want to take him. Why wouldn't you want to go and live and work and play in that stadium and for those fans? But something will happen, certainly, with Jadon Sancho over the next few days. I think clubs who are interested will kind of be playing poker, because they know the closer it gets to deadline day, the better deal potentially they can get out of Manchester United.
Yeah, and talking of, I suppose, outgoings and incomings at Manchester United, they have recruited well, Jeff, but do you think they still need a perhaps goalkeeper and a midfielder maybe?
Yeah, exactly the two positions I was going to say. Yeah, I think midfield, visually on the eye, watching the game the weekend just gone, I think they need legs in that midfield, just to help out, and then, like we seen with the goal, wouldn't be too convinced with the goalkeeper. Maybe you want someone coming in who's a bit commanding, and it sort of gives the defence that confidence behind them. So they're definitely the two positions, I think, yeah.
Yeah, now because Napoli are pushing for the loan signing of Rasmus Højlund, according to Sky in Italy. That's after AC Milan could not convince Højlund to join them under the terms of the deal on offer. Milan wanted a loan with an option, while Højlund and United's preference was a permanent deal. I mean, we've got European football expert Andy Brassel in the studio, so it feels like the first question, Andy, is feels like Manchester United feel like Serie A is the place to sell their players.
Yep.
Why is that?
There's no money there, is there?
So why?
But because it's a good profile of league to reinflate a player's value. And that is exactly the spot that Højlund's in at the moment. If you look at the players who've come out of difficult times, not just English players who've come out of difficult times in the Premier League to do really well there. Look at Scott McTominay's image now. You know, he's on the Ballon d'Or list. And go before that, you go Lukaku, Smalling, Young. You can go through them all, and they've reignited their careers there. Now, look, I think Højlund and United, if that is really their view, that they want a permanent deal, well, you know, I'd love a Lamborghini, but it's not going to happen. The fact is that his value has dropped so much over the last 2 years. The best thing for him and for United is to loan him out and get him to a point where he's sellable. At the moment, he is not sellable for anything near what they paid for him. Even if you're taking off the bits for amortisation, it's just not worth their while. I don't see how they can get a reasonable deal for him. Whereas if he goes to Serie A and shows a bit of what we thought he was about, then it's a lot different. And maybe this Lukaku injury opens it up for him.
But then somebody like Anthony has gone to Spain, and he did pretty well at Real Betis last season.
Well, that's an advert for the loan, isn't it?
But no one's coming in and offering big money for him. So it just seems that these players that United are stuck with because of mistakes they've made in the transfer market, they just can't move them on, even when they go out on loan and do pretty well, like Jadon Sancho. You know, he went to Chelsea for the second half of last season, did okay. Chelsea were pretty ambivalent about keeping him, were willing to keep him as long as he took a wage cut. He wasn't willing to take a wage cut, and they said, all right, you know what, not interested.
I mean, straight away, that's the problem there. The answer's in the question, isn't it? The fact
wages.
is, yeah, and this is a problem for every Premier League club. If you've got failing players, where do you put them? I mean, the Saudi Pro League worked for that for a bit, but if they're not going to Saudi, where are they going? Now, maybe the Turkish Super League comes back into the picture later in the window, but I think for the moment, you do have to go out there and prove the players are worth something. I mean, it's been a difficulty. You think of Marcus Rashford, for example. He went out there and did pretty well in the second half of last season for Aston Villa, in a Premier League context as well. But was it? I realise Villa are in a particular situation, but no one in the Premier League looked at that and thought, you know what, we're going to bet the farm on him. There was enough to show there's a player still there, but there's not enough to say we're going to bet everything on him. And I feel that was the case definitely with Sancho when he went to Chelsea and Dortmund. There's enough to say there's still a player there, but is there enough to say there's a game-changing player that we want to invest a lot in, and maybe not? If Højlund's got a full season to do it, then maybe at least that brings it closer to the mark where United find themselves an acceptable deal.
Sancho's an interesting one because is it basically he is just holding out now for a club that is going to pay his wages? He's not willing to take a pay cut. And are any clubs in Italy going to do that? He's on a ridiculous amount of money at Manchester United.
I think the situation is that because he's on big wages, because he's likely to leave on loan, although I think United would prefer to sell him on a permanent deal, it's one of those things that's going to get done late in the window because clubs know that they can get a better deal out of United regarding the loan fee and also how much of his wages they would have to pay. But the problem United have with Sancho, they don't need me to tell them, is that they bought him for a big fee and also they gave him a big contract. And there aren't any clubs out there who are willing to pay a big fee for him or pay him the kind of wages that he's on at United.
I think Roma could still happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would you turn down Roma?
Yeah, why?
You live in Rome.
Yeah.
You play for like an incredible club.
An attacking coach and Gasperini.
Exactly.
I think there's a lot to recommend it. But look, if it was all about the money for Sancho, he would have taken the deal from Fenerbahce a month and a half ago, and he hasn't done that. So clearly his ambition is to play for what he sees as a big club in Europe and somewhere where he needs to feel love around him. And that's why he's excelled at Dortmund. I wonder if there's a little bit of Dortmund in the background here, because there are people in the dressing room who would love to have him back. I don't think the club are convinced that it's a great deal, but I think from a Dortmund-Sancho perspective, there's something there that won't go away. You know, that's where he first emerged, and he's got a lot of supporters there. Now, whether the club think that that's the right deal and whether they think it's a financially expedient deal is different, but I think that's possibly part of what's holding up the Roma deal.